Welcome. Let's get painting with texture today. Let's try some Sgraffito, where you cut into wet paint to reveal what's underneath. Today I'll be using acrylic paint, and here I'm identifying the colors, where they sit on the color wheel within the red, yellow, blue spectrum. So we have orange and a green. We're dealing with a warm in the orange and a cool with the green situation. The next part. This is fun. Get together for some supplies from the kitchen that don't get used much. Or yeah, you can use a paintbrush, why not? Try out maybe an old paintbrush that's funnily shaped, kind of rough, or take a bit of a sponge. You can use it for our other projects. Cut it in a fourth like I did here, and cut out some sort of pattern along the edge. I did sort of a razor toothed edge. Thought I'd try that out instead of purchasing a squeegee. But you could use also a spatula from the kitchen, but just don't eat with it afterwards, alright? Alright, my goal is to start with two colors that have yellow within them, but have a warm, cool contrast. So I selected to mix an orange, and my last bit of that primary red and primary blue and primary yellow is all I'm using in this palette. So it's just yellow mixed with the primary red and enough paint that I can cover the palette. I'll be doing this in 2 layers, so definitely enough paint to cover the palette twice. Using my mixing it in between color here, just to bring in a little bit of neutralization into the green. A little bit of the orange to bring it a little closer to that color family of the orange, so they're not such a stark contrast. So yeah, bringing in a color that's beside it. If you don't want them to pop quite so much, have a little bit of each other's color in it. Alright, here we go, and just the paper. And I use my palette knife to spread it, just to kind of get it evenly out there and quickly. I'm just testing out these colors, seeing, do they want to be on a larger painting together? And it's a nice, for you, a way to introduce yourself to Sgraffito and test it out. It's nice with acrylic paint because it can dry rather fast, so I'll have a first layer that I lay out in a color. I'm going to do part of it in green and part of it in orange. I want it to be thick enough so that when I scrape away, you will reveal this color. So I'm going to have this layer of paint with the opposite color over it. Let's see. Here we go. Here's the side by side. You'll see as we go along. I just kind of put it a layer all over, so it's a consistency that's rather even and it's liquid. So now I can lay it out more evenly. Let's see, get it a little bit thicker. And then my brush was laying the paint out nicely, so I decided to Switch over to my brush. The viscosity of the orange paint was higher than the green. That means that it was more watery. Cool, cool, cool. For my second layer, I'm going to add a medium. I have just this flow retarder, so it's a medium that helps the paint stay open longer while I'm mixing this into each of these colors on my palette. The painting that I laid out first is drying. It should be at least tacky. And what's tacky? Tacky is if you were to put your finger on it, it most likely wouldn't bring paint up, but you could feel it, the moisture under there. See, look, let's see. I'm waving with my hands. You can use a blow dryer. You can use the air. I'm using some sunshine. I want to get just tacky. Oh, there's my finger. Is it green? A little green. Let's wait a little longer. Just a little longer. Okay, so on the green, I'm going to lay over orange. Remember that orange had that high viscosity. It means it's more easily going to be transparent usually too. So I'm laying it over it. If I hold my brush at an angle, it won't dig into the paint. So if I'm holding it at an angle, I can lay it atop the green. I don't need to cover the whole thing, but somewhat evenly, because I want to dig into it with my tools that I brought to the table, not just a paintbrush. Alright, time to try out the tools. Let's see how the knife is. It's kind of, it's a little disappointed with the knife. I wanted to see the serration of the edges. So I went to my trusty paintbrush, but then I was like, no. Let's try our sponge. That was cool. It'd be good on a big painting. It shows a good movement. I was happy with that. It didn't need to be this magnificent composition. It's just testing out the texture. So now I bring the green paint. That orange paint, it dried pretty fast. So I'm laying down the green with my palette knife. It's a bit thicker laying on top of the orange than the orange was on top of the green. And here I go again, back to my trusty paintbrush. Still gotta love a paintbrush. Just getting enough coverage so that you can see where I dig into it. I got the serration down a little bit better. I was glad about that. Got to test out the materials you have. Trying that brush out. I was like, yeah. Okay, back to the sponge. I ended up doing a somewhat similar pattern, but I got to keep the serration of the knife more clearly. So here you get to see the contrast of warm and cool, and when you have one as the base versus the other. Nice interaction of color. And then I have one more project for you. I think you'll be into. So stick with me. Do a quick one that shows a little bit more like a drawing style of Sgraffito instead of this larger area of mark making and tool making. And this I also mixed a little bit differently. I put out a warm red and a cool red. A warm red would be a cadmium red. A cool red would be a primary magenta. Cool would be closer to purple. Warm would be closer to orange. And then I laid out some, looks like a phthalo blue, phthalo green, and a primary blue. Looks like I tinted it a bit with white. I'm gonna make a gradation with a bit of warm, cool contrast, but I'm trying to see what kind of play of color I can get just using these four. I mix the magenta over to the blues. I think it's a phthalo blue and then a more cerulean primary blue, sort of. And then the warm cadmium red. Just to show what this little difference in warmth and coolness can make in your palette. So the warm red and the warm blue make a bit of a dusky night color, whereas the magenta, the cool red, and the warm blue make more of a vibrant kind of I think of flowers, I think of springtime. Okay, and then this phthalo, I think it's a phthalo green actually, with the magenta. That magenta is just nice. It has that transparency. And the phthalo and the cadmium, those are closer to being complementary colors, so we should get, depending on the mix, looks like I have more green than red, but it should be within the complementary contrast zone. Then I just start laying them out in this striped sort of gradation formation. It's drying pretty fast. I'm right in the sun. So if I would want it to stay open, meaning more wet, so I can work with it more, then I could have added more of the gel medium, a palette extender. You can really put them in any order you want. I'm going to do an overlay of white over this one, so it's actually going to be a value contrast overall, but still a play with this sort of palette to see if I want to commit to it. And you know, this is the color right here. All those other colors are the supporting players, and then this is the magic one, in my opinion. Okay. Yeah, I stuck with it editing wise because it's delicious, right? Come on, come on. You know that's a delicious color. It's delicious. I think I would have put it more in the middle if I want to do it again. Okay, and then what I'll do once I get back to the palette is that I'll bring back the medium again. I let that dry in the sun. Go ahead, dry in the sun, be beautiful. And I'm going to take the medium and just mix it with white. It doesn't have to be, it could be super thick. I don't want to use a ton of white paint. So I'm just going to put some of the medium on there so it stays open. A little bit of white paint. I'm not doing too thick of a layer. I don't want to lose all of the color underneath. But it's all about how you want to play with it back and forth. Using my palette knife just to get it the right bit of moisture level in it so that it can be spread easily across the gradation I created. I'm so surprised. I guess I brought the paintbrush because it's rather thin and the paint below it is rather thin. So if I were to scrape it with a palette knife, it could scrape it off. Maybe I saw little scrapes and it's almost a wash. But you got to be quick if you want to do Sgraffito into a wash because it can dry quick even with a palette extender. So it looks like I'm working one section at a time. Yeah, one section at a time, and then I just turn my brush around and I draw into it. And there you go, that's Sgraffito. Alright, I'll let you watch the rest of it. Hope you enjoyed it. Come mix some more paint with me. Let's make some things. Take care of yourself, y'all.